This baby-faced dealer and his girlfriend wanted it all, but they were caught. He scammed some poor grandma out of 95 grand with just simple phone calls. This former beauty queen used her influence to run a Ponzi scheme. And these are the laziest professional hitters in the world. Let's get right to the serial criminals who just can't stop committing crimes. Starting with number 6, Babyface Experience. 23-year-old Eddie Burton from the UK thought he had it all figured out. Splitting his time between Spain and the Netherlands, running a £20 million smuggling operation, and blowing stacks of cash at some of Europe's hottest clubs. His 25-year-old girlfriend, Cian Banks, wasn't just along for the ride. She helped coordinate shipments and laundered the profits. But while they thought they were untouchable, their empire was built on borrowed time. Burton's smuggling operation was in full swing by 2022. He had been hiding illegal substances in trucks coming through Dover, a major UK port. Officers uncovered a massive haul of illicit cargo stashed in boxes and even a discount grocery bag, an almost casual hiding spot for something worth millions. The first shipment contained enough product to flood entire markets, fueling underground networks and bringing in huge profits for those at the top. Despite the major loss, Burton kept the operation running. Weeks later, authorities intercepted another truck, this time discovering even more hidden inside a modified fuel tank. Altogether, the operation was worth around £20 million. Burton tried to keep things going, but investigators were already closing in. Forensics linked his fingerprints and DNA to both intercepted shipments, giving authorities solid evidence against him. But despite the busts, Burton wasn't concerned. Instead of taking it as a warning sign, he doubled down. Instead of laying low or being more cautious, Burton continued living between Spain and the Netherlands, enjoying the wealth his operation had brought him like he was Tony Montana. Even after losing millions in seized shipments, he partied like nothing had happened and kept the operation going. But while he spent freely, law enforcement was building a case. His downfall came in August of 2023 at a nightclub in Ibiza, where he was arrested under a fake name for separate offenses. After being extradited to Germany on unrelated charges, he was finally sent back to the UK in early 2024 to face the consequences of his smuggling empire. Then there's Cian Banks, the self-proclaimed influencer who wasn't just along for the ride. As Burton's girlfriend, she wasn't merely enjoying the luxuries his smuggling empire provided. She actively helped keep it running. Investigators found that between 2022 and 2023, she made frequent trips to visit him in Spain and the Netherlands, but she wasn't just traveling for romance. A review of her phone revealed that she personally smuggled illicit goods in her luggage on multiple occasions, sneaking product into the UK after her trips to Amsterdam. Beyond that, she played a direct role in coordinating shipments, including one of the intercepted trucks. When the first truck was stopped at the UK border, the one packed with substances in boxes and even a discount grocery bag, Banks panicked, realizing her fingerprints were on some of the packaging. She reached out to Burton, expressing concern about being tied to the operation. He dismissed it as a non-issue, assuming she had nothing to worry about. That confidence didn't age well. Despite her fears, Banks didn't walk away. Instead, she kept moving money, helping organize more shipments, and even branching out into new scams. Investigators later uncovered that her criminal activities extended beyond smuggling. She was also involved in a scam selling fake travel documents. By the time authorities caught up with her, the evidence was overwhelming. As of the release of this video, Eddie Burton and Cian Banks are awaiting sentencing, with both facing years behind bars. They had money, connections, and the chance to walk away many times, but they kept pushing their luck. Even after losing millions in seized shipments and leaving trails of evidence, they refused to stop. In the end, it wasn't just law enforcement that caught up with them, it was their own arrogance. Number 5. Simple coercion. A man posing as a bank official convinced an elderly woman in Missouri that her savings were at risk. Over 4 days, she handed him $95,000 in cash until law enforcement stepped in. 27-year-old Dongyi Guo faced felony charges for running one of the oldest scams in the book. Guo's scheme was pretty basic. He pretended to be with the FDIC and convinced the 79-year-old victim, whose name was withheld, that her identity was at risk. He persuaded her to withdraw large amounts of cash over 4 days, claiming he would safeguard the money. Of course, he had no intention of safeguarding anything. The victim's family grew suspicious and called the authorities, leading to a sting operation at her home. When Guo showed up for another payday, he was greeted by law enforcement instead. A search of Guo's car turned up $42,600 stashed in a black suitcase inside a Walmart bag. But the rest of the stolen $95,000 remains missing. Authorities suspect there may be additional victims or accomplices involved. Guo, with a long history of fraud and identity theft, was arrested and initially pleaded not guilty. However, he later changed his plea to guilty in late 2024. Now, as of this video's release, he's awaiting sentencing, with prosecutors seeking up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. However, the full extent of the operation still remains unclear. If nothing else, this case is a reminder to talk to your elderly loved ones about scams like this. If someone claims to be from a bank or financial institution and asks for cash, it's almost certainly a scam. Never call the number in an urgent message. Look up the official contact yourself. Nothing happens so fast that you can't take time to verify. These scammers rely on confusion and fear, so staying informed is the best defense. And by the way, don't forget to click that subscribe button and make sure you also click the bell to turn on all notifications so you don't miss any critical knowledge to defend yourself. Number 4. Beauty to Ponzi Queen. Maria Dulcepino Dickerson, a former beauty queen from California, was indicted for allegedly running a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme. Prosecutors say she used the stolen funds to bankroll a life of luxury, flaunting it all on social media while her victims watched their savings disappear. According to the indictment, Dickerson's company, Creative Legal Fundings, was nothing more than an elaborate front. She claimed it provided loans to attorneys for personal injury cases, promising investors guaranteed returns. But in reality, she was just shifting money around, paying off old investors with new ones, cash, while pocketing the rest in a classic Ponzi scheme. And she spent big. We're talking private jets to Vegas, designer shopping sprees, and even competing in beauty pageants. All while her victims, many of whom were from her own Filipino-American community, were left in financial ruin. Authorities say Dickerson raked in around $10 million from 140 investors, making bold claims about her connections to high-profile executives. Some victims invested as much as $200,000, lured in by the promise of easy profits. But like all Ponzi schemes, the money dried up. Investors stopped seeing payments, and lawsuits started piling up. Some hoped it was just a delay or a rough patch, but they all had the same question: where was their money? Of course, when investigators dug into Dickerson's finances, it was clear where the money went. She dropped $93,000 on a Mercedes-Benz GLE 350, then another $150,000 on a Mercedes EQS. She spent $1 million in cash on a Sacramento mansion and shelled out $30,000 to furnish it. And then there's all the casino trips where she gambled away thousands. As of the release of this video, Dickerson is facing 31 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud. If convicted, she could be looking at 50 years in prison and nearly $13 million in fines. It's weird that people still run Ponzi schemes because they never work. There's no exit plan or even a place to just walk away without being greedy. They survive by roping in new investors to pay off the old ones. But once the money dries up, and it always does, you're toast. And yet, people still run these scams anyway. Dickerson didn't stop or slow down. She kept it going until there was nothing left to take. But once the Ponzi train gets going, it only has one stop: prison. It's just a matter of how many lives get wrecked along the way. Number 3. Needful Deeds. Danny Noble from Baldwin, New York, must really love one particular Brooklyn home. So much that he scammed his way into owning it twice. Prosecutors say Noble, 55, filed a phony deed for a $2.2 million Fort Greene townhouse, despite already serving time for pulling the exact same stunt on the same house years ago. Back in 2019, he got sentenced to 4.5 to 9 years for running a similar scam on this house and 8 others across New York City. His method? Illegally transferring property titles from absentee homeowners, then renting or selling them like he was some kind of a real estate mogul. His partner in crime, Romello Gray, got 1.5 to 3 years for helping forge business records. Despite his past conviction, Noble thought nobody would notice when he filed another fake deed back in September of 2023, then took it to court to get himself declared the rightful owner. However, the real owner was paying attention and flagged it 2 months later. That got Noble back in front of the same judge who locked him up last time, who seemed both amused and annoyed. With at least 6 felony convictions under his belt, Noble was hit with $300,000 bail or a $2.5 million bond. As of the release of this video, he's due back in court, and if convicted, he's likely looking at another 5 to 15 years behind bars, depending on how the charges stack up. But given his track record, who's to say that'll stop him? Some criminals just can't seem to quit, even after serving time for the exact same crime. Whether it's arrogance, desperation, or he's just kind of dumb and obsessed with the one that got away. Noble seems determined to keep trying to steal this house. At this rate, he's going to trade that dream home for a 1-bedroom prison cell and stay there for a long time. Number 2. Crime after crime. Anthony Ruinard from Arizona built a reputation as a businessman, running multiple companies, driving expensive cars, and presenting himself as a wealthy investor. But behind the scenes, he was accused of scamming investors out of millions and is the prime suspect in a terrible incident involving 18-year-old Parker League. Given his long history of criminal activity, the real question is how he managed to keep up the act for so long. Ruinard's criminal history is just a huge checklist of bad guy decisions from the bad guy playbook. Between 2003 and 2007, he racked up charges for armed robbery, theft, making a threat to a school, and even leaving his dog to pass away in the backyard. But after that, he seemed to vanish from legal trouble. Instead, he reinvented himself as a businessman, running multiple LLCs, including Legacy Investors Group, an investment management company. However, Ruinard wasn't a changed man, and his company turned out to be nothing more than a multi-million-dollar scam. According to federal prosecutors, Ruinard convinced at least 54 people to hand over a collective $5.6 million, promising them easy money through venture capital and real estate investments. In reality, he was funneling their money into gambling, credit card payments, luxury rentals, and even a $344,000 armored vehicle. Some investors saw small payouts, just enough to keep the illusion alive, while others lost everything. And despite flaunting his supposed wealth, he had a habit of not paying people, including his employees at Pastiche, a Tucson restaurant he owned until it mysteriously burned down. While authorities were already eyeing Ruinard for financial fraud, the situation took a bad turn when Parker League's body was found in June. The Nebraska teen was visiting friends in Arizona when his body was later found in a bonfire pit in Bulldog Canyon. Surveillance footage showed League and Ruinard together at a Phoenix club before heading to a gas station, the last time League was seen alive. Ruinard later used the teen's debit and credit cards, and investigators found League's DNA in his car. When police searched Ruinard's Chandler home and car, they found a large amount of the illegal dusty stuff. Ruinard claimed he had been using both that and the illegal plant before meeting League, saying the substances might have blurred his memory. Convenient. The mystery isn't just about what happened that night, but why. Ruinard had no known connection to League before they met at the club. With his financial crimes unraveling and his businesses collapsing, was this another power play gone too far? Did League see something he wasn't supposed to? Authorities are still piecing together the motive, but with the evidence stacked against him, Ruinard's days of scamming, scheming, and skirting consequences seem to be over. Much of this information comes from Arizona's family, which has been closely following the case as it develops. As of the release of this video, Anthony Ruinard remains in custody, facing charges for both financial fraud and his alleged involvement in the incident with Parker League. He's been indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud and money laundering for scamming investors out of over $5.6 million, as well as second-degree charges related to League's passing. Ruinard had every opportunity to turn his life around, but instead, he doubled down, moving from robbery and scams to something far worse. Some people don't just refuse to change, they just escalate until they finally go off the cliff. Number 1. Cheaper and cheaper. Tan Yuhui from China thought he had the perfect solution to a business dispute. Hire someone to whack his rival, a guy named Mr. Wee, and be done with it. So he put down a hefty $282,000 for the job. But instead of getting what he paid for, he unknowingly launched a ridiculous game of hot potato, with each triggerman subcontracting the job to another triggerman until the final guy in the chain of triggermen had enough and ratted everyone out. It all started when Tan hired triggerman Zi Guanggan. Zi took the money, then decided he didn't want to get his hands dirty, so he passed the job to Mo Tianxiang, paying him half the original fee. Mo, apparently thinking this was a great business model, brought in Yang Kangsheng, offering him a smaller cut. Not to be outdone, Yang Kangsheng then passed it to Yang Guangsheng, who figured, why not? And passed it to Ling Xianxi for a mere $14,000. But Ling had a moment of clarity. Instead of carrying out the job, he reached out to the target himself, explaining the situation. Together, they staged a fake kidnapping photo, sent it up the chain, and then went straight to the police. By the time authorities untangled the web of subcontracted incompetence, everyone involved was in deep trouble. Tan, the mastermind, was sentenced to 5 years, while the hitmen received sentences ranging from 2 to 4 years. In the end, not only did Tan fail to get rid of his rival, but he also landed himself in prison, all because he hired a bunch of guys who treated serious crime like a game of telephone. And yet, despite the absurd levels of incompetence, everyone involved still managed to commit a crime, just not the one they were hired for. Turns out, when you're the kind of person who thinks contract wet work is a good business move, you're also the kind of person who can't help but bungle it so badly that you incriminate yourself anyway. Click to watch one of these next videos.